a really fascinating poll came out revealing that one of the top issues of Americans, we've talked previously in the show today and tons about this throughout the last couple of years. Well, I haven't done my show that long, a couple months of my show, but then a couple of years kind of as a country, is this threat to our democracy that is posed right now. And a fascinating poll came out showing that that's a top issue for voters right now, which rarely are issues that kind of non-material, if that makes sense. That sounds like I'm saying it's not important. It's so important, but not something that you feel in your day-to-day economic life or something like that. And it's something you more have to have a conceptual understanding of the threat to our democracy that you don't feel in this immediate moment. But that's now risen to the top of the list for many Americans, and it is ranked as the top issue when you look at percentages of people who say this is my top issue or this is my top issue, which is really, really, really interesting. So we're going to take a look here at that poll, but then I just want to discuss why I think that is. And one of the reasons is not just because of what I hope it to be, which would be that we all see the threat that Donald Trump poses and the MAGA movement poses to our democratic process. But I think it's kind of this combination of people who think the threat to our democracy from Democrats stealing elections and people who think the threat to our democracy because Donald Trump and his movement are heavily leaning in that direction. And of course, Donald Trump denied rightful election results, which is the top way you get mass amounts of people not to believe in our democracy, which then threatens it deeply. So here's the poll. When you look at voters ranking the threat to democracy among other issues, and it's 21% of people say the threat to our democracy is the number one issue posing our country right now. And then the number two is cost of living. That's crazy, especially in a time when inflation is hitting people. Prices at grocery stores and gas prices still are high, and it's a huge discussion topic. The fact that cost of living doesn't come in at the top as it was in many of these polls before now is pretty interesting and profound. And again, I think that represents a good bit of Americans who believe what I believe, and that's very good that they're paying attention to this threat. And what I believe, and I think a lot of Americans do who answered that as their top issue in this poll, is that Donald Trump's actions in trying to overturn the 2020 election, denying the results, so that he could go and try to overturn them, that represents a move by part of our country and a movement that believes our elections are not legitimate, or at least wants to state that so that they can stay in power even whenever the voice of the American people collectively went in another direction. And so it's hopeful that a lot of people see that threat. What I'm concerned with is a lot of the people citing that as their top thing are actually MAGA people who believe the threat is that the Democratic cabal is stealing elections, which of course is nonsense. And every single time I've begged, pleaded, please show me the evidence. You keep speaking of MAGA. I don't get it. I'm still waiting. And so very fascinating. And I think this is part of why we're seeing a shift in the polling towards the Democratic Party, because at least the part of that number, that 21% of Americans who rank that as a top issue, who are not a part of MAGA and see the threat of the Republican Party right now and see the threat of Trump and his movement, are going to think, listen, even if I'm in economic pain right now and I might think it's the Democratic Party's fault, or even if I'm not a lifelong Democrat or whatever, it doesn't really matter. This is what I would hope they believe. It doesn't really matter about those other issues if our democracy falls, right? My voice won't be able to get heard. We won't be able to address problems in our country if we don't have a healthy democracy. And that party and that movement is trying to deteriorate that as we speak. So in this election, I'm going to put that at the top of what drives me to the polls and who I vote for. So I think that's affecting a lot why the Democratic Party is seeing a boost in the polls, because among the investigations and all of these things, the January 6th Select Committee and their public hearings, I do think reached more people than had been reached before that point about this issue, right? I think a lot of people saw January 6th. It was bad. Then they moved on. And the January 6th Select Committee really revealed how much of a part Trump's anti-democratic actions played in that, and how it wasn't just about that day. Even while devastating, it was about Trump's larger actions in trying to overturn the 2020 election generally, which is really scary and really dangerous. And so I think people have woken up to that fact more than ever. And we're seeing that in the polling, hopefully, that most of that 21%, we hope, is people who see the threat of Trump and not kind of the other way around. And so it's hopeful and it's sad, right? It's hopeful because people are seeing the threat. It's sad because in America, one of people's top issues is the threat to our democracy. And that's not where you want to stand as a democracy. Now, I have the belief, I was talking to friends recently, and they had a more pessimistic take on this, but I genuinely believe we're going to get through this. We're going to eventually defeat the movement that is this threat to democracy through the political system, and come out the other side. But that does not diminish the real threat that is posed right now, and how serious and important it is that people pay attention to it right now.